Welcome to the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast, where it is never too early for fantasy football. My name is Jeff.
I'm Alex.
As always, thank you for downloading, listening, liking, and commenting on our podcast videos. Please join our community by subscribing to us on the socials. Our handle on all platforms is at N2E Fantasy. We are also available on all major podcasting apps by searching N2E Fantasy. Alex, what do we have on today's show?
On this episode of the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast, we are recapping all of the NFC Teams 2026 NFL Draft picks. So we will go team by team here, alphabetical order, and we will discuss mostly the fantasy relevant players for you. So let's get kick-started with the Arizona Cardinals. And
Let's
Jeff,
do it.
you picked this for them, but it was still seemed like a surprise. They started off their draft with the third overall pick, taking running back Jeremiah Love out of Notre Dame, despite having James Conner, Trey Benson, and Tyler Algier, who they just signed, already on the roster. Questionable move. They did get a guard this in the second round, which they needed, and Carson Beck early in the third round, the quarterback out of Miami and formerly Georgia. They also got Reggie Virgil, which is a sneaky wide receiver I liked out of Texas Tech, another offensive lineman, and wide receiver Zachariah Branch, who fell later than I thought. No, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong team here. My bad. Forget that part.
Absolutely. So I do want to correct you on the Jeremiah Love. I had him going 7th to the Commanders.
I thought for sure you had him number 3, but yes, 7th
No,
to
I
the
thought
Commanders.
I thought they were taking Arvell here. I thought Love was just a smokescreen. It was not. So definitely our first fantasy player 101 here. How do you feel about Carson Beck having a chance to start games this season, first of all, and then secondly throwing to Michael Wilson and Marvin Harrison?
It's tough to pinpoint because Carson Beck has had good moments and he's had bad moments, and I don't know if he's going to be a game manager or if he could be more than that. I do know he was the most pro-ready quarterback out of this class, and if Jacoby Brissett continues to try to hold out for more money, they might just go with Carson Beck. And
Absolutely, and Minshew.
I think Carson Beck and Minshew have a lot more in common than Brissett. I like Brissett for being a more vertical quarterback, but I mean, so be it.
Absolutely. But I didn't hate their draft. I didn't love it either because I did think they had other needs. But they definitely have a star running back for at least the next 5 seasons because you have to assume the 5th year option at this point, especially with the 3rd overall pick. Now, moving on to the Atlanta Falcons, who traded away their 1st round pick last year, I think, for an edge rusher. So that doesn't look so good right now. They did end up with wide receiver Zachariah Branch, who I expect to either be the 2nd or 3rd receiver this year. But other than that, not much else at offense. How did you grade their draft overall?
Well, they've got a potential first round talent in the 2nd round, and they got a 2nd round talent in the 3rd round. So they made the most of it early on in this draft. The rest of the class didn't really move the needle for me, but their first 2 picks were very, very solid.
Absolutely, and I hope they all stink because, I'm a Carolina Panthers fan. All right, speaking of the Carolina Panthers, they just happen to be the next up team here, and they got one of the best players here in the 1st round. A lot of people are praising them for it, and Monroe Freeling, but their offensive player was just held to Chris Brazzle Dazzle the 2nd. So what were your thoughts on the Carolina Panthers draft here?
They went after 2 premier offensive linemen. So Monroe Freeling out of Georgia that you mentioned, already. Sam Hecht, who was one of the better center options in this draft class. So important to continue to build along the offensive line and prepare for a couple of the veterans potentially leaving or getting replaced. And then they focus on defense as well as getting Chris Brazel a second. I don't really care for Chris Brazel. I'm not really going to be high on anyone coming out of Tennessee for the foreseeable future. And I know he had some success with another program before. He doesn't do it for me. He's got some character concern for me. And I think he's probably wide receiver 5 for them and might eventually take over Xavier Legette's role if Xavier Legette doesn't break out. But I mean, they already have Tet, Coker. They, as you mentioned the last episode, they have Mechie and now Brazel. And it's going to be hard to figure out who the wide receiver 3 is going forward.
For sure. And I was looking at their receivers and remember last year they signed Hunter Renfrow. I was just looking to see where he would sign or if he would retire again. But I guess retirement was always on his docket after last season, most likely. So we'll see if he actually signs with anybody. But very happy with the tackle and very happy with the defensive tackle. I think their defensive line is going to be one of the toughest to face right now in the NFC. So pretty good stuff from Carolina as they remake and try to keep pumping up Dave Canales here because he brought him to the playoffs in year 2, and hopefully they'll build on that. But they also signed Haynes King, the quarterback, as an undrafted free agent after the draft. So I don't know if he's someone that'll factor in because I think anyone could pass Kenny Pickett, but that's just my thought. But he's taller than Bryce Young. I don't know if his intangibles are as good as Bryce Young, but sometimes I would kill for a quarterback that fits the stereotypical mold because seeing over an offensive line isn't always the easiest at Bryce Young's height.
I do think it's interesting, Duff, that this draft class for Carolina very much paralleled the Houston Texans. A lot of similar selections or similar style selections.
Absolutely. All right, we can move on to the Bears. We know a bunch of Bears fans out there. They went with 2 weapons in Sam Roush at tight end and Xavier Thomas at wide receiver. So, how do you think the Bears did here in their draft, and what do you think about the weapons that they added?
I'm not super big on Xavier Thomas, but I really like Sam Roush. And he's one of the tight ends I would have preferred the Texans to take over Klein. He is primarily a blocker, but he's underrated as a receiver. He's kind of very similar to Loveland. Not as good as Loveland, but very similar, and will probably take Komet's role at some point. But clearly, the Bears want to get better at running the ball more, and the best way to do that besides offensive line, which they also took an offensive lineman in the second round, and they've been working on that. But they now have 2 really good blocking tight ends that can also catch the ball, so they can disguise their formations and have pass plays from run formations and also have that extra protection. So I think their red zone touchdowns are going to go up this year.
Hopefully, but Roush is going to have a little bit of trouble getting onto the field. That's still there. I don't know if he's a cut or a trade candidate, but sure the Texans would take him.
Yes.
So, all right. So that does it for the Bears. Let's hop over to the Dallas Cowboys, who had 2 first-round picks, used their first 3 picks on defense, bolstered the line a little bit, used some more picks on defense, and then finished with wide receiver Anthony Smith in the 7th round. Their offense was not at all bad last year. It's probably actually one of the top offenses in the league, which I think Brian Schottenheimer has bought himself at least another year or 2 as the Dallas Cowboys head coach, which we all bashed on them for hiring him. But do you believe the defense now has done enough to replace Micah Parsons and potentially start taking a step in the right direction now?
I think they basically shotgunned the defensive edge position. They basically acquired via trade or draft 4 edge players. So I think they're approaching it by committee, and a couple of them will work out. Lawrence is somebody that was on the rise before the draft, and he could be really good. Kind of maybe even undervalued if it works out. So I understand where they're coming from with that selection. It's unfortunate they didn't add more to the offense. I feel like they're another team that needed a better backup running back behind their starter and Javonte Williams. But a lot of teams punted on running back this year. It's like they all collectively decided it's not a good one, so they didn't even bother, even though there was some quality ones that stayed until round 7 or 5. Ultimately, though, I think they did what they needed to get some balance on their team. Whether or not it's enough, I really don't know. I think teams like the Giants and the Eagles also improved, so it's going to be very difficult in that division.
Absolutely, but it does feel like they took a step in the right direction, and obviously they added a nose tackle last Quentin Williams, so they've added a bunch of pieces since the Michael Parsons deal. So, all right, hop over to one of your favorite teams here, the Detroit Lions. They went a tackle early, which we had discussed that they were going to go early and often on the offensive line. Only shocker is that was their only offensive lineman that they drafted. They scouted the most, and I would have thought that there would have been at least one more lineman taken. And then they took Kendrick Law in the 5th. That was their only offensive skill position player. So, what was your thoughts on Detroit's draft?
I thought it was a terrible draft. I thought Miller went earlier than I thought he'd go, and there was a huge run on offensive linemen, so I understand why they ended up with just one, but I didn't like really any of their other picks.
Gotcha. All right, what do you think about Kendrick Law? Do you think he'll be a piece, or not even
No,
touch
because we
Isaac
need Isaac
Tesla?
Tesla. Isaac Tesla. Come on, Jeff.
Exactly. I should have known. I should have known. All right, so that we can wrap up Detroit kind of quickly because they didn't do anything offensively. And speaking of not doing anything offensively, Packers did nothing offense other than a center, and they took a kicker in the 6th round called Trey Smack, and I think that's the coolest name for a kicker. So that's officially now the coolest name for a kicker.
I think one of the cooler names for a center is Jaeger Burton, the guy that they drafted. So that was kind of cool.
They went for the cool names only. So
All right.
I
Well,
think,
we can.
yeah, we can plow right through them, but I think Trey Smack could be a kicker that's their kicker this year. I think that he could pass. I think they have Brandon McManus on their team. I think he could pass Brandon McManus quite early in the training camp here. So, and then you can hear that he smacks one through. So I'm kind of pumped for him. I mean, Loop is kind of a weird last name. If you look at Baltimore's kicker, like you can't kick in a loop, but you can smack one.
Luke sounds like somebody who completely missed their kick.
Exactly. All right, here you go. The floor is now yours here for the Rams. Quarterback Ty Simpson goes 13th overall to them. 2nd round, I think a little bit better because you kind of wanted him. Max Clare, tight end. And in the 6th round, they went CJ Daniels at wide receiver. So, what did you think of the Rams draft?
This is right up with the Jaguars as the worst draft I've ever seen. At least the Jaguars had a lot of picks, and some of them might have worked. I think every one of these, other than Max Clare, was probably a bust. But even Max Clare, he now became the 5th tight end on this roster. Who knows if he's going to get an opportunity and when it's going to happen? Ty Simpson is a terrible pick at 13. He's someone I was higher on at the beginning of the year, but where they are in a win now mode, and with them extending Stafford, Simpson makes no sense. When they could have had Keenan Sadiq, they could have had Mekhi Lemon, they could have traded down and got even more draft capital. It doesn't make any sense. I think, honestly, if they needed to get another quarterback in a future draft class, they would have had the assets to trade up to do it. So their defense improved because they traded for former Chiefs starting corner and signed the other former Chiefs starting corner in free agency. So at least that got better. Man, not thrilled with Max Clare. Or, I'm sorry, not thrilled with anything outside of Max Clare.
Well, and they already have 4 or 5 tight ends, as we've mentioned, so someone is going to have to be the odd man out there. I know they re-signed Tyler Higbee, which you have said multiple times that his time is coming to an end, but that hasn't happened yet. And I know you wanted the Texans to even look at Tyler Higbee in the offseason, but they had re-signed him before he even hit free agency. But let's hop over to the Vikings here. They went defense, tackle, safety, fullback slash tight end Max Breedson, and they went running back Damon Claiborne in the 6. What do you think there?
I think Claiborne will now make my top 24 rookies because he has an excellent chance to earn a position and a role here behind Aaron Jones, who's ancient, and Jordan Mason, who may or may not be a good running back. We're not really sure. Claiborne is the best receiving back now. He's very agile and quick. Vikings are likely to be in some playing from behind situations. So Claiborne becomes a sneaky guy to target in Dynasty and maybe even the end of redraft. No one else really did anything for me. They did. They are likely to sign Jawan Jennings to fill in with Addison having off the field issues and losing Jalen Naylor. I think he's a really good fill in.
I tend to agree with that. I was trying to think of where I could see Jennings go, and Jennings was actually decently smart to wait till after the draft and see who missed out on wide receiver. Thought the Rams really could target him as a potential third receiver, but obviously that has not happened yet. And I'm a little disappointed with Ty Felton for the Vikings from last year. And I think they picked up Dion Bell in undrafted free agent pickup as well. So he was somebody that was touted early on and kind of fell off. So some names to throw out there to keep an eye on for the Vikings. But they have Kyler Murray throwing the ball this year, so we will see how much he can actually distribute. Now, I know you're going to want to talk about this team a lot more, and it's the New Orleans Saints. And their first pick was Jordan Tyson, wide receiver. They also went Bryce Lance at wide receiver, and they went Baron Brown at wide receiver. So they went 3 receivers, which does not spell good for Vele and Bud Means and Trey Palmer. Anyone that was on the roster seems like they are in jeopardy. And they also beefed up behind Juwan Johnson, and they went with Oscar Delp at tight end. So what was your thoughts on the Saints draft here? Do you think this is going to be real supportive of Tyler Shuck?
I do. I think this was a really good draft for them. They got Tyson to be to Olave, Delp, who I think could be their long-term tight end 1, Christian Miller on the defensive side, someone I thought the Texans should be interested in. I do think Bryce Lance is more just a speedy guy with upside that could potentially be an outside or vertical wide receiver. I'm not sure if he's good or just athletic at the moment. They got a solid safety. I don't really know much about Baron Brown as a wide receiver, but this seemed like a decent draft haul if I've ever seen one. And another thing to note is they did not take a running back, and I don't think we've heard yet if Kamara is retiring or staying active. So
Hey,
right
they
now
got
they seem like
Travis Achan.
and Kamara and Neal. I think they still have Miller, don't they?
Yep. I think Miller's 4th on the depth right now with Kamara still around. I think Miller's into the last year of his 4-year deal, and he has not panned out year to date with multiple head coaches now. So his time on the roster could be coming to an end.
It could be. It just depends on him. Kamara retiring? Like, what's happening with Kamara?
I mean, he's getting paid to do nothing. I mean, just give Achan all the carries, and yeah, Kamara just collects a paycheck for sitting on the sidelines.
You're gonna start speaking Italian to me. Kamara
Achan,
just to sit on the bench.
Travis Achan. You know, I have to say that at least once a podcast or once every other podcast at this point. But let's hop over to the Giants, who had two top 10 picks after trading Dexter Lawrence a few weeks ago. And both of those did not go to weapons, which was a little surprising because there was some thought out there that they would try to help Jackson Dart out a little bit. But they did go the third round pick, Malachi Fields out of Notre Dame. He seems like he fell a little bit, and that was their only weapon that they went with. What was your thoughts here on the Giants draft?
They went best available player, and I thought that they had a great strategy, getting Arvell Reese, Francis Moa, and that tells me he might be their long-term wide receiver too. Big body, contested catch, vertical threat to go with the speed demon, which is Neighbors, and Mooney, who is likely wide receiver 3 for them, as well as they already signed Isaiah Likely in the offseason. I think they have an outside chance to be the division leaders in the NFC East over the Eagles, over the Cowboys, over the Commanders.
We will see if they have enough to get that done in year one. I'm not completely sold on Jackson Dart and his health yet, but obviously, they have Jameis Winston who will throw the ball all over the field. I'm also not completely convinced that their weapons. Neighbors has yet to show us that he can stay healthy for an entire season. So year 3 will be his big year. He's coming back from a big one too. It's the ACL, right?
Yeah, I think so.
So pretty big one for him. But their division rival, and you would probably say that this is the team that will challenge them the most for that division title, and it's the Philadelphia Eagles. And they pulled some sneaky business here when they traded with a division rival, Dallas Cowboys, to sneak ahead of the Pittsburgh Steelers and take Mekhi Lemon at 20. They took Eli Stowers at 54. They took Cole Payton at in the 5th round. And they took 2 of your favorite weapons in this draft, though, in the 1st and 2nd round, and they added more weapons. Do you still believe that A.J. Brown is not being traded?
No, I think he's being traded. I don't think it's for as much as you think it's for. I would have serious concern. If the Patriots traded a first-round pick for A.J. Brown, I think that's a colossal mistake. But we shall see. As far as the Eagles, as much as I like Mekhi Lemon and Stowers, I don't like that they went to the Eagles. They're both over-the-middle guys, and Jalen Hurts is one of the worst over-the-middle throwers. He doesn't really do it. They don't really have a high pass game. They typically try to run the ball a lot. So it's kind of disappointing in that regard. But they changed their offensive coordinator, and maybe they'll go more pass heavy. Maybe. We will see. Kyler Stowers extremely talented, and the Eagles were lucky to be in position to take them.
Yeah, I was struggling with the Eagles' projections just because they have a lot of pass catchers, and Hurts has not been known to throw over 4,000 yards, so we try to spread out less than 4,000 yards over all of the skill position players. Stowers has thrown for touchdowns in college. He's also run for touchdowns in college, so don't be surprised if he's used as like a gadget player, because the Eagles do love their gadget type players. But I will say that it does seem like they are gearing up for a shifting of the guard, and that could be a new quarterback in place in a year or so. So they could be moving off of Hurts for a better quarterback that fits this team today. All right. We have a few teams left here, and the first one here is the San Francisco 49ers. They did not have a first round pick because they traded back. They took Dijon Stribling. They took Kalem Black in the third, and that was their two skill position players. And I'll let you go off on Stribling and Black here.
Well, I had Stribling as I think my number 12 wide receiver.
Huh? I took him at
And
6 here.
I did not have Black on my running back list. He missed the cut, and the 49ers have proven to not been reliable when it comes to drafting running backs, and they have other talented running backs on their bench. So he does nothing for me there. Stribling, I'm torn on Stribling between either he's going to be sneaky good in Dynasty or he's going to be a complete and total bust. I don't know. I don't know which it's going to be. They like spending a 30-something overall pick on wide receivers. They did it with Ayuk. They did it with Pearsall. They've now done it with Stribling. He's going to fill the Juwan Jennings role, but he's going to be behind Christian Kirk and Mike Evans and Pearsall to start the year. So we'll see. He's definitely someone I'd be interested in hopefully contributing in 2027.
Absolutely. Dynasty is not just for this year, as you just mentioned, so it's something to pay attention to. But I also have him behind Demarcus Robinson right now, as long as Demarcus Robinson stays on the roster. They also took Jordan Watkins and Joe Cowing, and they still have Ayuk on the roster, so they retooled at wide receiver compared to last year. All right. We have this champion Seattle Seahawks here in the first round. They did take the second running back in Jadarian Price. That was pretty cool. And then in the 6th round, they took Emmanuel Henderson Jr., wide receiver. That was their two skill position players. Any thoughts on what they've added here, considering their losses of Kenneth Walker and a few defensive players as well?
Oh, I think they desperately wanted the trade down and no one offered for them. Price, I think, is a little overrated for a first round pick. He went to a good landing spot and he's going to be overvalued for it. Ultimately, they don't really have much of a choice because they don't have an alternative, and Charbonnet could miss a significant part of this year. So Price could have a better 2026 season than maybe the rest of his career.
Absolutely. And I'm toying with putting him at my 102 and rookie picks right now. So
Don't do it, Jeff. Don't
is
do
that
it.
possibility. He's got the opportunity, and yeah, he should have the Kenneth Walker role very early. And we saw what Kenneth Walker did. MVP Kenneth Walker. So I don't know if he'll land there, but my very early ones, I have him at 102 right now. So we will see. I am sneaking up a few players that people don't see coming just yet, but maybe they'll also sneak them up as time goes on. But what do you think about Emmanuel Henderson Jr.? Is there any value to him, or are we not aware of the Kansas wide receiver?
He's not on my radar, and I kind of feel like that's a wasted pick based on how deep their wide receiver core already is. They
I was
probably should
wondering
have
if
used
Cup
that.
got cut or is gonna get cut. Although he was their best receiver in the Super Bowl. So you got
And they do.
JSN, Cup, Horton, and Shaheed, and then you got Henderson now.
Are
Oh,
you forgetting about Bobo?
Bobo.
Bobo.
You're not sleep deprived at all, are you?
I'm so tired.
the the is like Tommy Boy, Rowd as they're intoxicated by the nitrous oxide that is coming through the car. But
Yeah,
I digress.
I was gonna say my favorite part of Tommy Boy. We should have done this on the last episode. Yeah, or maybe we could do it for the Rams. Is the scene where they drive erratically and get pulled over by the cop, and he's like, "Follow my lead, okay?" And he just gets out and runs. He goes, "Bees, ah, bees."
Uh,
That would explain some of these picks for some of these teams. Wild and reckless.
Absolutely. I digress a bit, and we'll save that for our entertainment podcast that'll be coming to a podcast outlet near you. So next up is another one of my division rivals in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They did get Reuben Baines Jr. in the first, a little bit later than I thought he would go. They are being praised for their third round wide receiver in Ted Hurst. So hoping that turns out to be smoke and mirrors. And they also took Bauer Sharp in the 6th round. So hopefully a Kate Otten replacement, maybe in a couple seasons. At least he should be the number 2 tight end. What did you think overall of Tampa Bay's draft? And do you think this will be their head coach's last season being their head coach?
I thought their first 4 picks were incredibly solid. As far as head coach, I mean, he should have been fired last year. Broyles and Aaron Glenn both, I think, had their entire staffs fired, and they kept their job for one more year. I think that's insane, and they're very much over their heads. But the Bucks general manager's probably one of the best general managers in football, and he got really, really good value with Reuben Bain falling to him. You got Josiah Trotter, the linebacker, whose daddy was one of the best linebackers in the NFL. Ted Hurst is a nice new, probably wide receiver 4 over Tez Johnson for them. Needs a little bit of development, but he's got at least 3 guys ahead of him. Keontae Scott was one of my favorite defensive backs in this entire class, and they sniped, in my opinion, the Texans. I think the pick before what the Texans had, and then the Texans traded down right after this pick. So I really like their draft class a lot, and the Buccaneers take a lot of guys that I like during the process.
Absolutely. And I have to disagree with you. I mean, I hope that Tez Johnson holds on to the 4th receiver spot. He was so much fun to watch last year, but you could be right. You definitely could be right on that one. So they have an embarrassment of riches at wide receiver consistently. So I know that they wanted Evans back, and they probably wouldn't have took Ted Hurst here if Evans had come back. Like, can't imagine what that receiver room would have looked like or been like. So pretty cool outcome for them, I would say.
All
All
right.
right.
Well, we have that one last team in the NFC, the Washington Commanders, who were without their 2nd and 4th round pick in this draft class. They lucked out, got Sonny Styles, 7th overall, to fill out the middle of their defense. They got a versatile slot wide receiver in Antonio Williams out of Clemson. They got defensive guy later, as well as Katron Allen, the running back out of Penn State, who I thought might be better than Singleton was at Penn State. And it reminds me very much of a David Montgomery type. I think Katron Allen has a chance to be the running back 1 for the Commanders this year over Jacoby and over
Bill.
Rashad White.
Over I'm Just a Bill.
Yep, I think Katron is a really good player and at least could be the 1-2 thumper.
Do you think Antonio Williams is the favorite for the number 2 spot right now, or not quite yet?
No, I think he's the favorite for number 3. I still think that they're going to be in on Brandon Ayuk. However, they can't talk to Brandon Ayuk. He's still under contract with the 49ers, who have no problem just holding on to him and are kind of toxically trying to get revenge on him. No one can talk to him, so it's not like they can work out a contract and say, okay, we're willing to trade you X, Y, and Z. And the 49ers have to be the middleman and have to set it up. And I think most teams who might be interested in Ayuk are just waiting for them to release. So they're playing an interesting game of chicken where the 49ers are trying to hold on to him until somebody actually offers a trade for him, and all the other teams are just waiting for them to cut him. But they have no real deadline to have to cut him by.
Absolutely. Just week 1, so they don't have to pay him. I heard that the 49ers can't get a hold of him, and I heard the 49ers have given teams permission to reach out to him that want to trade for him, and they can't get a hold of him either. So it sounds like Brandon Ayuk is just not returning phone calls either. So he might just be done with the NFL at this point. So that's a very real possibility. What do you make of their 7th-round quarterback, Athen? I'm not even going to butcher the last name out of Rutgers.
Calak Manis, maybe?
Yep. But they have Mariota coming back. They have Daniels. And now they have this. Like, why?
Athan is a quarterback that was on the rise before the draft played out. I don't know if that means he's going to be any good or not. I do think that getting a cheap backup quarterback is never a bad thing. And hopefully he can be a really solid starter if they ever get forced into starting him.
Absolutely. But I think Mariota will be the backup this year, so he'll be the 3rd-string quarterback this upcoming year.
All right. Well, that does it for another episode of the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast, recapping the 2026 NFL Draft NFC teams and their draft classes. Thank you for downloading and listening to this episode, and please don't forget to like and subscribe. Please leave us a comment and share the show. Every little bit helps.
Yeah, and in the next 2 weeks, we will be doing our first run at the schedule and the top 24 rookies for us. So in some order, those will happen depending on when the schedule is actually released in our recording schedule. But until then, you can find us on all podcasting apps by searching N2E Fantasy and with our handle at N2E Fantasy on all social media platforms. Please join our community and give us a follow. Until next time, take care of yourselves and remember, it's truly never too early for fantasy football. Thank you again.
Bye, everybody.